Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour. I'm Dr. Gene Dorio with my co-host, Barbara Cochran, on your hometown station AM 1220 KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, bringing information to enhance one's quality of life. We are sponsored by Advanced Audiology and In-Home Care, Santa Clarita. Barbara is off today. I think she's doing jury duty, and we have Mike Doherty from one of our shows here, Families in Action.
That's right.
Which with Carrie Quasham. And also you are public relations with Henry Mayo Hospital, community relations. Welcome to the show. This is quite a day we're having here in Santa Clarita with the rain. I mean, I'm literally soaked. I couldn't even find a place to put my jacket. I was dripping so much.
It's a little moist out there.
It is, and a lot of people would probably call me a big drip anyway. But, we were talking just for a moment before the show about our jury duty, and one of the things we will talk about eventually on the show is seniors and purpose and depression, especially this time of year. But you served and have done jury duty, and so have I. And I think you have an interesting story about what happened the last time or the time before when you served as a jury foreman.
Well, the first time I was called for jury, I was up in Anchorage, Alaska, and it was a concealed weapons case that they decided to bring, that the defendant had wanted to bring to a jury. And when they were choosing the jurist, when they were asking us questions to see who was going to be on and who wasn't going to be on, they asked me if I owned any guns, and I said, no, I don't. And they said, so I take it then that you're not a fan of guns? And I said, no, that's actually not true, because I had guns, I had hunted and all of that. But what happened was I went rabbit hunting, and when I shot a rabbit, it squealed and leaped up in the air, and I felt like I killed the Easter Bunny.
Oh.
And so everybody in the courtroom started laughing after I said that, and I was worried the judge was going to be angry, and I looked over and the judge was laughing. So when we get back into the jury room to deliberate, and they started deciding who they were going to have be the foreman, this fellow says, I loved your story about thinking you killed the Easter Bunny, so I elect you. And everybody else didn't want to do it, so they raised their hand and said, yes, let him be the foreman. So that's how I got to be the foreman.
And was it a good experience for you?
It was a great experience. It really was. We even came to a point where we had to send a note out to the judge because we had a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's a part of our system, and of course I think there are some people who won't vote because if they're registered, then they're going to possibly have to serve on a jury, and
that does happen.
They don't want to do that. Now, about 20 years ago, there are 58 counties in California, and they wanted to revise the jury system, and I knew it was a problem in terms of comfort for those people who were serving, and for somehow I was for Los Angeles County, each county had to propose new changes for the jury system in the state of California. So they appointed people to be from each county, and Los Angeles had their little group, and I was appointed to be a part of that. So I had to go to meetings with a lot of lawyers and judges and other people, citizens, who made some changes in the system and how it was. And, I think every time I've gone, it's improved. And I've really liked that. And I think they still have some room for improvement. But I know that when we submitted the recommendations, and of course, LA County is big, and we had a lot of people making recommendations. And those recommendations, the next time, about 2 years later, I went and they were implemented. So, I've been a part of that. I've been a jury foreman like you. I didn't shoot any rabbits, but, I did become a part of that. And some of our seniors just feel it might be a little bit too much for them in terms of, getting out and doing something. But it does give one purpose, and it shows an insight into how we do things in the jury and court systems in the United States.
And it's a good thing for them to do, too, because first of all, it's different. Secondly, it stretches your mind a little bit because you're having to think about some different things, and you're having to listen very carefully to what's being said in the courtroom and all of that, and take notes. So I think it would be an experience that they would, I don't know if enjoy is the right word for it, but feel some civic pride at what they'd done and participated in. and taken part in something that really all of us should do.
And I think so. I think, I enjoyed it. A lot of people, though, will say, I can't go down to the Valley because you and I have served down in the Valley.
Yeah.
But there is a courthouse here, and many of my patients have transferred their jury duty up to the courthouse here in Newhall or in Santa Clarita.
Maybe because it was a problem.
Because it was a problem
Yeah.
in terms of transportation. And they acknowledge that, and they did that, and they stay on the list on the, I will be serving jury duty next month.
All right.
And I was filling out my form this morning, and it says that if you're 70 years old, you can probably get an excuse or a 12-month delay for health reasons. And certainly there are some people that have other problems just other than just transportation. But, it is a worthy endeavor for us to go out and serve and be a part of it and get that insight and understand where people are coming from. Because, I think that I found the problems related to the jury system too, that say that maybe it's a good system and a worthy system, but sometimes it's not accurate.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. But for our seniors this time of year, we were going to kind of segue into some of this.
I was just going to tell you that as we were sitting here talking about serving on the jury and being the foreman, I remembered something else that was funny about the first time that I served when I was a foreman. Of course, I had to stand up in the courtroom and say that we had found the person was found guilty, right? And so when I'm leaving the courthouse, when it's all over, and I step into the elevator, guess who I stepped into the elevator with? The defendant.
Who was acquitted, I assume.
Who was found guilty. But
found guilty.
Yeah. So I'm standing there,
Yikes.
Whistling, going,
Not with a gun,
hi
no.
there, how are you? I'm the guy that said you were guilty.
Well, I remember also that I went and, I bring things, a laptop and things to do work like everybody else does. And you don't know if you're going to be called, but I got called into the courtroom, but I went 2 days and then I dressed down, dungarees, crummy shoes and barely combed my hair and, a 5 o'clock shadow. And, and you really don't talk to people unless you know them. And most of the time you're afraid because, you don't want to be too friendly. You don't know if somebody's going to say jury tampering, blah, 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 blah. So you just stay on your own. And I just remember when they call you up and they're interviewing you, they ask you, give your name, where you come from, and what you do for a living. And I mean, I'm totally dressed down, so I don't have a tie on, nor a stethoscope around my neck or anything like that. And I sat in the number 1 chair of the jury box, and they said, okay, please introduce yourself. And I gave my name and that I came from Santa Clarita. But when I said I was a physician, everybody's head turned to me like, no way. Because I just didn't fit the part. But then that group did choose me as jury chair. Not that I walked in the next time with a stethoscope around my neck, but the fact was that, and surprisingly, of the 12 of us, there were 3 others who were from Santa Clarita.
Is that right?
Yeah, they were educators and things like that, and one was retired. It was really an exciting thing to do and see people doing. And one was quite older, and said, and he enjoyed doing this. This was a part of his life. So going into what we were segueing into is having purpose, and with weather and keeping us indoors and the cold and things like that. One of the things that seniors face in Santa Clarita and everywhere else is depression.
They sure do.
And it's a tough thing to overcome, isn't it, Mike?
Well, it is, especially for seniors. And as you know, seniors, the majority of seniors actually, think that depression is a normal part of aging. And of course it isn't.
It isn't.
And so they just sit there and silently suffer with it, thinking that that's just the way it is. And it isn't.
And how do we, though, some listening to the show are, in their home, and a few are reclusive, and they know that. But, I know I do house calls, so I visit them. And they listen and they like what we are saying. That's their window to the outside sometimes for them. But how do we get them to take this next step to the outside?
Well, there are a couple of things. For instance, you're one of the few doctors left in the universe that actually do house calls. And when you are talking to a senior when you're going through a depressive state. And and you also know that one of the big issues with seniors going to see a doctor, it's highly unlikely that they will actually seek the help of a mental health professional. They may come and tell you about being depressed and all of that, but it's not likely that they will take the step to actually go. And statistics prove that. There's a very, very small percentage, first of all, of seniors who will even admit that they're having a problem with depression. And then the number of the number of seniors who would go actually to see a mental health professional is very, very slight, which is unfortunate. And there are a lot of reasons for that.
Isn't it a stigma? Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
For guys,
absolutely.
The lack of strength, mental strength. I mean, this is what, they've grown up to be tough, the breadwinner, things like that. But, now it's a different story. And sometimes it does roll around in your brain a little bit too much and come back and evolve into that depression.
Well, and when you look at senior depression, and because clinical depression is actually can propel someone to thoughts of suicide, taking their life. Seniors when I speak about depression and I ask people what age group they think has the highest number of suicides or suicide attempts, most people will say college-age students. That's where they think there's so much pressure in school and all of that. But the actual fact of the matter is that the biggest, in any age group, the biggest number of suicides are completed by seniors in their 80s.
Think about this, though. How many are undiscovered? Because when you're in your 80s, you can take an overdose of medication and people will say, oh, he or she died in their sleep.
Right.
Natural causes.
So the number of
probably could be higher than that.
Yeah. And then the second highest group is actually from 76 on up. But on top of that, as you were talking about earlier, white males are at risk more than anyone. Because of just what you said. Because of what you said. It's like, hey, I'm a guy and I can deal with this. And a lot of just looking at people in general, looking at seniors in general, if they were to tell, let's say a family member came over to visit and they were to say that family member, excuse me, if they were to say, I'm just feeling down and I've been feeling down for a while, it's more likely than not that the family member will say, well, just pull yourself up, pull yourself out of it.
Right.
Just get up and get out of that mode. And if they're clinically depressed, they can't do that. It's physically impossible for them to do
it
that.
It is impossible.
They have to have help.
Really pull yourself up.
Yeah,
and
if you're
people have to understand that, because they do think, I'll take a drug, or I'll talk to somebody else, or I'll get a dog. It doesn't work that way.
No, absolutely not.
Clinical depression is just one of those states where you need help.
It's very serious, and it can lead to thoughts of suicide.
But counseling is out there to a certain degree, but I think that big group of guys who get depressed and don't know it don't seek that counseling. They don't want to go to a woman.
Right.
And that's just the way some of the guys are made up physiologically. They're not going to go thinking they're going lower. But we don't have enough guy counselors out there to help them out. And plus, the psychiatrists who are out there, they're few and far between that will deal with mental health issues in seniors. But I do think at the level below an MD psychiatrist level, the counseling level is very good. It's very good here in Santa Clarita, and we have a lot of men and women counselors that could easily help you get out of the doldrums and the clinical depression.
Absolutely, and I would say, Dr. Dorio, and I know you agree with this, is that just ask for help. Anybody. I mean, ask your pastor, ask a good friend, ask somebody, and don't take no for an answer. If they say, "Oh, you can pull yourself out of it," if somebody has been feeling down for more than a couple of weeks, it's not likely a passing blue mood. It's likely clinical depression, and you need to see somebody about it. So, and as you know, the SCV Senior Center has counseling. It's a great place to go. So, pick up that phone, call somebody if you can't get out. Do something. Don't just sit there and suffer with it. You don't have to. Not at all.
But Mike, the other side of the coin is that you mentioned families or friends coming in to see their loved one. They will maybe hear them say, I'm down, and maybe push that aside a little bit. But there are clear-cut signs and symptoms that one looks at, and it's not just body language or what they say. There are many things that start to point and give you evidence that something is going on with the individual. They're not dressing the same they used to. They're not combing their hair.
Right.
They're not taking baths, they're not eating well, they're not taking care of their pets. I mean, there's so many other things that caregivers and friends and family members should all recognize.
Absolutely. And you mentioned quite a few of them, and others would include things like giving away possessions, especially possessions that are dear to them. There are certain right on the nose indications where somebody says something like, "You'd be better off without me." I mean, they don't have to actually come out and say, "I'm planning to take my life."
Right.
I mean, but all
if
these
they're
things
at that point,
but if they're, that's dangerous.
pretty significant.
And if somebody does say that, if you're visiting your elderly mom or dad and they say that, do not leave them alone. Absolutely do not. And if they try to get you to swear to secrecy, don't agree to that. Absolutely not. And the other thing that's important, and you know this, and that is listening without being judgmental.
Yeah.
Just listen. What do you have to say? You want to hear them talk.
But you know how hard that is when it's your loved one?
Oh, I could imagine.
And then the other side of the coin is the other person, the depressed person, is sensing judgment.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they'll sway from it, or they just won't go in that direction anymore.
And one other thing that I want to say, because this is so important, there are so many people out there that think that if they say anything to somebody who's talking suicidal, that it will cause them to commit suicide. That is absolutely false.
Yeah, the underlying potential guilt that they might feel if they, put something forward to them.
You're not going to push them over the edge just by listening and asking them questions. And then you want to pick up that phone. You want to get them help. Do not leave them alone.
Speaking of, though, I mean, this is the debate, and I know I listened to your show with Carrie and Quasham and I have had a discussion about the centering mental health care with a phone number in Santa Clarita. And, he says there are lots of phone numbers that one can call and get a hold of people in their right minds that will help people put others in their right minds. But, I just think that, as we talk about the Valley and Los Angeles and everybody else, here in Santa Clarita, we need to have that central phone number, not a national phone number, but a central phone number for our young kids, our seniors, across the board, anybody having any kind of mental health problems.
You know what I need to do? You know Larry Shallard over at COC, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Larry heads up the Suicide Prevention Committee, of which I'm a member of, and you ought to show up there sometime and
invite me. I'd be happy to put in my 10 cents.
I mentioned it to him already. That
because so it's so important that we live in a great community, and we try our best to help everybody out there around us who are having problems, whether they be physical problems or mental health problems. But to center some of that now and focus more diligently on our citizens, it'll make a huge difference. It'll rise us all up together for everyone to do well in Santa Clarita.
Well, I just want to encourage all the seniors that are out there listening to, we've just come out of a time that can be a little difficult for people, seniors that may have lost family, may have lost a loved one, going through the Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and New Year's and all that. And now here comes a great shiny new year that we can look forward to, and get out there and get active. And you know what? Here's the big thing. And when I speak at the Santa Clarita Senior Center, I always say this: they have so much to contribute. They have so much wisdom.
Absolutely.
They have so much that they can contribute to society. So don't let anybody tell you differently. Get out there and do it.
Great words, Mike. Mike Doherty from the the hospital, the behavioral health unit over at the Henry Mayo Hospital, community relations, and also Families in Actions here on
With Carrie Quashen.
With Carrie Quashen.
Mondays.
Mondays.
Yeah.
What time does it start? Because I just turn it on as I'm driving around, and I catch
We're
bits
on
and
at
pieces
noon.
At noon, 12 to 1 o'clock.
12 to 1.
Appreciate it. Mike, thanks for being on the show again and opening our new year.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank
you
you.
very much. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.